Welcome to episode 173 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I'm the host, Kim Newlove. Today's episode is part of my Back to School series, which features interviews with 9 pharmacists who teach online courses. Up next is Dr. Ashley Walker. During our conversation, we talk about her online classes. One is called Speed Signing, the other is called Preparing for OTC Hearing Aids. If you're interested in discovering how learning American Sign Language will benefit your patients with hearing loss, you need to listen to this episode. We also talk about OTC hearing aids, deaf culture, inclusion, and more. And just a heads up, Ashley is deaf, but she can speak. So you will hear her use her own voice on this podcast episode. The video from our conversation is also available via YouTube. A link to Dr. Ashley's LinkedIn profile and my YouTube channel are in the show notes, which you can find on thepharmacistvoice.com. That's pharmacist with an S, thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and search for episode 173. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's my conversation with Dr. Ashley Walker. Hi, Ashley. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. Now, I am Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast, and we have an interpreter with us today, a sign language interpreter named Jennifer. This is exciting. There's a first time for everything. This is my first time having someone with hearing loss on my podcast. Thank you so much, Ashley, for being the first.
My pleasure. My pleasure, and thank you for having me again.
You are very welcome. This is the first of at least 2 podcast episodes that we're going to do together. Today, we are going to focus on how you use your voice as a pharmacist who is an educator in the form of an online course. You have at least one course out, which I have taken, and now you are doing other classes as well. I shouldn't call it a course, it's an online class. At this point, I would love to open up the floor to you so that you can talk to me about all of the different online classes that you offer.
Okay. Alrighty. So the first online class that I have started is called Speed Signing with Dr. Ashley Walker, which is me. In the Speed Signing course, my whole intent of this course was to expose healthcare providers, mainly healthcare providers, but anyone who's interested in communicating with someone with hearing loss. Because there are many in the United States that communicate using American Sign Language. Whether you're in the pharmacy, picking up medication, or if you're checking in for a doctor's appointment and you're waiting for an interpreter to arrive, it's okay. You can still do the basics like what is your name, date of birth. You can ask those type of questions while you're waiting for the certified interpreter to arrive. That way you don't delay care. And also, think about it. You can go to a restaurant, right? Would you love to be able to walk up to a table full of people with hearing loss and say, "Can I help you with your order?" Instead of feeling clumsy and out of place, you will have the confidence in being able to say, "I may not know much, but I know the basics just to get by." That's all we ask for. We're not asking for someone to come in and be like full-blown ASL interpreter all the time. No. If I can be quite honest, I'm the only deaf person in my family on both sides. My parents, the only thing they know how to do is fingerspell. Literally, that's good enough for me. It really is good enough for me. I have a twin brother. He can fingerspell. He knows some signs, but he knows enough to have a simple conversation with me. And I've had family members and friends that I've taught basic signs to come up to me and say, "Hey, I ran into someone who was struggling with communicating, and I was able to fill in the gap until someone else was able to come along." So that was the whole purpose of me creating the online course, was to expose the community of healthcare providers, other individuals who are just simply interested to the language. It's very fun, and it's also an opportunity for you to network with other people, whether it's a pharmacist, a doctor, a teacher. It's just a fun time to come together and how the class is set up. I do have 2 additional interpreters who come in with me, and we go into breakout rooms. And you spend anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes in the breakout rooms with an instructor, myself, and the other 2 interpreters, and they teach you a predetermined list of signs. And then you switch rooms 3 times. And the very last room, the very last time, I flip the script. I quiz you to see how much you remember. Because it doesn't matter whether you're learning ASL, American Sign Language, French, or Spanish. You're only going to remember if you practice. Practice, practice, practice. So if I'm constantly signing to you and not allowing you the opportunity to sign, how are you going to retain it? If you don't use your signs, you lose it. You really do.
I agree.
I don't have the luxury of being around the deaf community as often as I used to growing up. I went to school, I had classes with other friends who were also deaf and hard of hearing, so I was with them all the time. But as we grew up, started our careers, we started doing different things, so you're not with the community like you used to be. So I said, I don't want to lose my skill. So I will often sign to myself in the mirror just to keep it fresh on my mind. And then I met my husband, I was just signing randomly to him, and he'd be like, "What? Hey, I know you don't know what I'm saying, but I'm doing this for my own benefit." But he started picking up on sign language. So I absolutely love sharing part of my language with other people as a teaching moment. It's fun. Kim, you came to this session. You came to the session I had on Sunday. Did you have an awesome
Yes.
time?
I did. I learned things. Even counting is different from what I expected.
Yes. Yes. So I am actually going to be doing a course every month. The dates will vary because I have to coordinate with the interpreters to make sure their schedule is clear and my schedule is clear, and we can come together at a cohesive time to host this event. And how each event is set up, we will always review what we have done and then add additional words. So whether you come in on the 5th session, you will still get the previous session's experience, and it'll be a quick one through, and then we add in new words. So it's always growing, always growing. The other course, go ahead.
Do you take requests for words or vocabulary that your students want to learn too?
Yes, I actually do that. I actually save time in the course, and I'll ask towards the end, or if we have a little bit of extra time while we're in the breakout room, I'll say, "Hey, is there something you're burning to know?" And I'll give it to you right then and there. And then when we go back into the breakout room, I'll share a little bit of fun facts about American Sign Language. For example, in the past session that we had on Sunday, I shared that the foundation of American Sign Language is the same, but each region of the United States may have a varying sign for the exact same word. Words like outside, they're completely signed differently whether you're in New York or whether you're in Louisiana. It's the same thing with strawberry. Strawberry has so many signs. It's signed differently north, south, east, and west. So there's little things about American Sign Language. You know how we have a tone of voice? American Sign Language actually does have a tone, and it's all about your body language. You can be sassy when you're signing, because if you think about it, individuals with hearing loss, we can't hear your tone of voice. We can't. So, how do we tell if you're mad or upset? We read your body language. So, I like to call us the kings and queens of reading body language because it comes in
Nice.
handy. And I'm like, are you being sarcastic? Or are you just being mean? Just by the body language, yes. I've been able to pick
Oh,
up on
wow.
that. A fun fact, my kids, my oldest said, Mommy, if you can't hear me, how do you know it's me when I come in the room? I said, kid, each one of you has your own smell. So I know which kid is getting in my bed simply by their smell.
That is so cool.
And I'll call them by name without opening my eyes. Get out of my bed and go get back on your bed. And it gets them every time. The other course that I'm getting ready to teach is called Preparing for Over-the-Counter Hearing Aids. I don't know if you've heard recently, but as of last Tuesday, the FDA announced the release of over-the-counter hearing aids to be available beginning in mid-October. And as a pharmacist and as an individual who's worn hearing aids for over 30 years, and I've worn analog hearing aids, digital hearing aids, behind the ear hearing aids, in the ear hearing aids. There's so much. And I've already had pharmacists reaching out to me and saying, hey, we don't know nothing about these hearing aids. Can you help us? So I decided I can definitely create a course and talk to you about all the various kinds of hearing aids available. That will be available over the counter. And I am aware of the features that these over-the-counter hearing aids will have and how they differ from prescription hearing aids. One of the biggest questions I get asked about hearing aids is, are they covered by insurance? Not really. There are some private insurance companies that cover it, but I can tell you right now, Medicare, they do not pay a lick for hearing aids. Nothing at all. So I've always been asked, well, are they going to be over the counter? Can you bill them as DME, durable medical equipment? Absolutely not. It's all cash. I don't know what the cost of the hearing aids will be over the counter because that has not been released yet. But based off of what I've gotten out the media, if the average hearing aid is $5,000, and by making them available OTC is supposed to save you up to $3,000. To me, it sounds like you'll still be paying roughly $2,000 for a pair of over-the-counter hearing aids. But I know all these tips and tricks that you can do to extend the lifespan of your hearing aids. Then you will not find out if you're a pharmacist. How would you know? So with over 30 years of hearing aid experience, I've had to extend my hearing aids because if insurance isn't paying for it, I don't want to have to buy hearing aids every 2 years. If I can stretch it 5 years, maybe even 7, I'm golden. So I wanted to create a course to help pharmacists be prepared, help them to be proactive rather than being reactive instead of waiting till that first customer comes in and say, hey, I need a hearing aid. And they're like, I have no clue how to help you. So it is my hope with this course they will have the confidence and the knowledge and know how to engage with members with hearing loss. And that's one of the things I talk about, engaging. You have to know how to engage appropriately with someone with hearing loss. And that's what I teach you in both courses, actually. You cannot engage with someone that has hearing loss in terms of hard of hearing the same way as you would with someone that is deaf. What I mean by that is someone that is deaf would have hearing loss that's classified as severe to profound. Someone that has mild to moderate hearing loss would be classified as hard of hearing, which means they actually may be able to hear you pretty good without hearing aids as long as the volume is louder. But someone like me who's deaf, I have profound bilateral hearing loss. So in my case, you talking louder is not gonna make a difference. It's just not. But I also teach people not everybody can read lips.
Good point.
And many people think that everyone can read lips. They can't. I personally believe that lip reading is an innate skill. You either got it or you don't.
Oh, okay.
I have many friends that are deaf and hard of hearing, and only a handful of them can read lips. But the interesting part about them is we work together so well because they hear way better than I can with hearing aids. So they don't necessarily have to look at you to understand what you're saying. I have to be able to see the source in order to understand speech. If I can't see the source, I'm completely lost. Completely lost. So it is my hope with both of the courses that I have available that people will be interested in learning how to bridge the gap between hearing and deaf and hard of hearing. And what it all boils down to is providing resources to close the communication gaps that are there because there are so many barriers. And the sad part about it is, ever since ADA came out over 32 years ago, the resources have been there to bridge the gap. And I think one of the biggest issues is, especially in the healthcare realm, is they're not aware of it. Because if you think about it, and I can ask you this, Kim, if you mind sharing, when you were in pharmacy school, I know there's a course where we talk about different cultures. Did they even mention deaf culture? Because it actually is a culture.
In one word, no.
Sure. And even when I was in pharmacy school, it was not mentioned at all. And the crazy part about it is, I attended pharmacy school in New Orleans at Xavier. And Xavier is in the heart of one of the largest deaf and hard of hearing communities.
Really? I didn't know that.
Right. There is. And it's the largest deaf community consists of New Orleans and Baton Rouge. And Baton Rouge and New Orleans are only 45 minutes away from each other. Literally. So they travel back and forth. And I knew then, when I was doing my rotations in New Orleans, going out in the community, and doing brown bag reviews, if you will, they had no idea how to engage with the deaf and hard of hearing community. And one of the biggest reasons was they didn't know how to identify individuals with hearing loss. I've experienced it myself. I didn't have my hearing aids on, and I have what's called vertigo. And my mom took me to the emergency room, but she pulled in the ambulance bay, and they came and got me, and she went to go park the car. And as she was coming back in, they were getting ready to sedate me. Had my mom not walked in when she did, they would have sedated me because they thought I was a mental patient. I couldn't understand what they were saying. First of all, I was completely dizzy, so I couldn't see to read lips. And I kept trying to tell them, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. So it does bring a little bit of fear. They're not aware that I'm deaf, and I'm trying to tell them that I'm deaf. But they're not hearing me say I'm deaf. Instead, they're looking at me as a crazy person off the street. That they need to calm down. And oftentimes, that is the reaction that someone with hearing loss receives, which is why so many of us avoid seeking medical care when we need it. It's because of those interactions. And that is why it is my hope and it is my goal with the courses that I've created to bring awareness. Hey, there's an entire community out there that needs health care. There are ways and there are resources to help bridge this health care. You just have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing to say, okay, I have a customer or a patient that's deaf. What do I do? You can call an interpreter, but you don't have to wait until the interpreter shows up. Go ahead and get the basic information. Know how to say, what's your name? What's your date of birth? Why are you here today? How can I help you? So those are the type of things that I teach in my online speed signing course. Now I want to make it clear. The online speeding course does not give you the certification you need to go out and say, hey, I'm an interpreter. Absolutely not. You still need to have the appropriate credentials if you want to be able to counsel a patient or a customer. All my online speeding course does is gives you the basics to have a simple conversation. Just like you would with a friend. That's all it does. It's introducing you to the language. I can refer you to some really, really good instructors if you want to prolong your learning of ASL and actually get certified in ASL. Because let me tell you, there is a huge need for more interpreters. There is. Not just in the medical field, but in the school system as well. Just imagine how many students are falling between the cracks because there's not enough interpreters available. I was fortunate when I was in school. I was really, really fortunate because we had a plethora of interpreters, but many of them were older. They've retired or they've passed on. So where is the replacement for that? And it's rare nowadays that you have so many kids with hearing loss in the same class or in the same grade. That don't happen anymore. So you need to have multiple interpreters. So I can have an interpreter for 5th grade. I can have an interpreter for kindergarten. Instead of saying, yeah, well, we're going to go with the kindergarten kid because they need the foundation. The 5th grader has to figure it out on their own. No. So that's why I encourage others to learn the language. I took up Spanish. I cannot speak it very well, but I can read it. But I made an effort to learn another language because I do know we have a lot of Spanish-speaking individuals in the United States. And for many of them, Spanish is their primary language. Okay, so if I can help you, why not learn the language? And I did. So do the same thing for someone with hearing loss.
Ashley, did you know that high schools now have American Sign Language as a second language option?
Yes.
Isn't that awesome?
It is awesome. I will say this. When I was growing up, ASL was around, yes, but it was not recognized as a language. Meaning, it wasn't available. Let's see, when I was in middle school, it was not recognized as a language, so you couldn't take it as a course. It wasn't until 2006 where I started seeing American Sign Language offered as a foreign language in high school, and they can use that towards credits.
Mm-hmm.
So it's come a long way. And for many individuals that were born into deaf families, and what I mean by that is mom and dad is deaf and their children are deaf, their first language is not going to be English. It's going to be American Sign Language. And one thing people really need to know is American Sign Language and English do not have the same sentence structure.
Really? I didn't know that.
No, it's not the same sentence structure. English is more of subject and verb, right? ASL, you're more of painting a picture. So I'll give you a perfect example. In English, I can say the big blue house. That's English, right? In ASL, I would say house over there, big and blue. It's backwards. Because I'm describing the object first. I'm going to describe the object. That really is what ASL is. I'm literally painting a picture. I'm taking words and I'm converting it into a visual image.
Mm-hmm.
That's why music is so beautiful in American Sign Language, because you're literally watching the signer create a movie in front of you. Just taking those lyrics and they're converting it into a short version that's pictographic in the mind of the receiver. So it's not verbatim. It is really shorthand. So if you grew up learning ASL and then you go to school and they teach you English, it's a hard switch because the word structure is completely different. And oftentimes, individuals who grew up like that were punished because you don't know English. That's not English. It's not English according to your standards. It doesn't mean they don't understand it, it's just they receive it differently.
When I brought up American Sign Language as a foreign language for high school students, I feel like it's a step in the right direction to getting more awareness that American Sign Language is its own entire language. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it is. To be honest with you, when I was in pharmacy school, ASL was offered as a course, and it was actually taught by an interpreter. And we had an opportunity to take a foreign language as an elective through pharmacy school. And I was like, can I just take ASL because I knew the language? But to my dismay, I was told under the pharmacy curriculum, ASL did not qualify as a foreign language. Come again? So I fought with them on that. And I was like, if you are going to disregard ASL as a foreign language, you're basically disregarding an entire community.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that go hand in hand with healthcare? It doesn't. I mean, healthcare should be open to anyone, regardless of their background, regardless of what language they speak. So, I actually won that one and I was able to use ASL as my foreign language. I was like, I signed. And I love being able to interact with customers or patients that come in and I see it's easy for me to identify who has hearing loss because I have hearing loss. And it's someone who has hearing loss. It would be easy for you to identify another individual that has hearing loss. So it's easy for me to go up and say, can you speak sign language? And if they do, I proceed in a conversation with them. If they don't, that's okay. I know other methods to speak with them so that they feel comfortable and they get a clear understanding of what's happening rather than saying, oh, I can't help you. I'm stuck. But you're never stuck. You just have to know what resources are available to you. If you can sign, pull out your phone and get to texting. Open up the notepad. Grab a pen and paper. We are not offended at all by any means. We just want to know that you hear my concerns and you're willing to help address those concerns rather than dismissing, which is why I'm so adamant about teaching hearing individuals how to embrace this unique community.
Ashley, I love what you're doing. And I think that you are helping people in the hearing community help people in the hearing loss community feel seen, heard, and understood. I love it.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Kim, for hosting this podcast to help bring more awareness. I really, really appreciate that because
My pleasure.
it's one thing to just post about it, but when you connect with other people, other pharmacists, other healthcare providers, you see, I never really thought about this. We need to shine light on that. So me using my voice to bring awareness, it's just second nature for me because I know what it's like as a patient, as a customer, and I also know what it's like as a healthcare provider to see the bias that happens, the lack of training that happens. Because if you think about it, how many of us can honestly say that when we apply for a job and we get the job, especially in the healthcare setting, do they even mention to you what type of patients you may encounter? I've never once heard them say, you may have someone that has hearing loss come in to be seen. Here's our policy on what to do. Here are the resources that we're able to reach out to in case that encounter happens. I've never had a job where that was available. None. Or even mentioned. So I'm hoping me speaking up, me having the classes that I have will encourage others to stop and think and say, hey, am I really reaching out to everyone in my community? Am I being inclusive to everyone in my community? If I'm not, what can I do to bridge that gap?
Ashley, you just used the word inclusion. I love that word. I have a son with autism, and inclusion has been it's been a passion of mine for my own son. And I know you're not my daughter, but I am so dang proud of you for using your voice to educate others. You're an advocate, you're an educator, and I got to say I took your class last Sunday, so August 21st as we record this. Today is August 24th, so just a few days ago we were in class together. I was entertained too because I got to hear your stories about you interacting with your children, and you were talking about cookies. And I can't remember the story, but it is just it's a relationship building thing. Storytelling is relationship building. You told me stories during our breakout sessions of your interactions with your own children who are in the hearing community. And just understanding you better was a joy. I just want you to know that I understood that. And I feel like we are closer together instead of farther apart because of the stories you told me. You experience the same things that everybody else does. It's just your ability to tell people is just a little bit different. And I just want you to feel included in my back to school series because you're a pharmacist using your voice as an educator. And again, I'm so proud of you. And thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me, and thank you for helping to shine the light on a community that has often been left in the dark.
You are very welcome.
And, as a mom with all three of my kids, they're all hearing. I mean, my hearing loss is not genetic, so there's no reason for them to have hearing loss. But my oldest, he was born at 25 weeks. So I was like,
Oh,
well, I
wow.
know speech is going to be a little bit delayed for him. So I said, why don't I just start signing to him? And I did. So sign language is his first language. And even today, like this year was his first year in kindergarten. And his class does American Sign Language. And it just warms my heart when he goes, I know how to sign. My mommy taught me. So he's also helping his classmates to learn how to sign. And he said, I sign because my mommy can't hear. And little kids, they don't move their lips very well. So when I have to keep saying, what? Say that again. He said, okay, mama, I'll sign it. I'll sign it. So he knows if mommy's struggling to understand him, he'll back it up with his sign language to help me understand what he's saying. It's not perfect, but that's the whole point. He's making an effort. And he's only 5. The 3-year-old does the same thing. I'm teaching the 8-month-old. Her favorite sign at this moment right now is milk and more. So I love being able to share with them and seeing them show their friends. My 3-year-old says, hey, I know how to do magic tricks, but I do them with my hands. But she's 3. So I'm like, okay, whatever you have to do to share your little fun fact about yourself.
Ashley, I think you will find that your kids are more inclusive because you are their mother. My younger son, who does not have autism, my younger son, Derek, has been the big brother to his own big brother, if you know what I mean. And he amazes me every day because he grew up among people with challenges. Let's just say people with challenges, not just autism, not just Down syndrome, not just mental retardation. He was the only normal kid in the waiting room, the only typical kid, I should say. And he grew up among so many people with challenges that he just naturally includes other people, and your kids will too. I'm just predicting the future here. Take it or leave it, but I really think it's going to happen for your kids too. And they are going to expand the world of their classmates because you were their mother, So I just want you to know there's magic coming. There is magic.
Yes. I may even include them on a couple of the courses because they like to teach as well. They like to show what they know. So I may have them as some little guest interpreters with me, and they can help teach a class. Yes.
I would love to see them. I would. That's great.
Okay. All right.
I just love the inclusion that this conversation has fostered. I think a lot of healthcare professionals that listen to this will pick up the clue phone, as I call it, and realize that they too need to do whatever they need to do to include people with hearing loss in their wheelhouse. They need to get some skills that they can use so that working with people with hearing loss becomes something that is no longer a challenge. It's normal. Right. It's part of daily life.
I think so many in the healthcare space, they've heard of ADA, but many of them may feel like, well, ADA doesn't apply to me, but it does. You have a legal obligation as a provider to provide accessible care to your patient. And for someone with hearing loss, they may require an interpreter. I can't tell you how many doctors I have encountered that says, well, who pays for it? You do. Because you are the provider. You are offering the service. And it is completely unethical to say, well, let your spouse or your kid be the interpreter. No, they should never be put in a position where they have to be a support person and an interpreter. That's too much stress. And it's one thing I would definitely never, ever, ever. I will never place that burden on my children. Ever. I I know for my son, he goes to the doctor frequently, for checkup. And I make it known, Mama is deaf. Make sure you put that in highlight on his chart. Mama is deaf. That way you know when you schedule an appointment and Mommy is bringing him, you are prepared. I tell them up front because I want to be able as a mother to make sound decisions for my son. I can't make those decisions if you're going to exclude me from his care. I can't. And my husband should not have the burden of, let me listen to what the doctor says and then I'll tell you after the fact. No, no. We should both be able to receive that information at the same time and make a decision together as parents about the care of any of our children. So healthcare providers need to be willing to say, okay, I have a customer with hearing loss. What is the best mode of communication for them to where it's understandable? Because you will have some that don't communicate via sign language. I mean, think about it. Many Americans today, they lose their hearing as they get older, right?
Yes.
So they're likely not going to know sign language. And that's okay. But you still need to make an effort to be sure that whatever information you're giving to them is understood and it's accessible.
Definitely needs to be accessible, those doctor's appointments. Now, I want to say something that it's a cliche, but I love a good cliche. It doesn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you. Have you ever heard those words before?
Yes, I've heard that before.
Yes. And what are your thoughts on that when it comes to people with hearing loss?
For me, it's almost exclusive, which means as someone with hearing loss and witnessing a lot of my friends go through it, it's almost like we're constantly having to adapt who we are to fit the needs of the hearing individual. Instead of, hey, how about you meet me halfway? There's some things I simply can't do. You know, reading lips is tedious. It's a lot of work because I'm not catching, and this is for anyone, we don't catch every word you say verbatim. Unless you're saying a three phrases, but a conversation is more than three phrases, right? So if you're in a
Yes.
doctor's office, I'm literally catching every other word that you're saying and unscrambling in my head to make a full sentences. And you often may hear me repeat back what you said to make sure I understood it. That's ongoing, all day long. When you're conversating with someone who's hearing able, it's nonstop. So at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm drained, I'm mentally exhausted because my
I feel you.
brain is in overload trying to keep up. But when you're inclusive and you provide the resources to facilitate smooth communication, you alleviate that burden. Not just for the individual with hearing loss, but you also alleviate the burden of yourself as a hearing person because you're not stressed out. You're not you're not worried about are they getting everything because you took the time to say, okay, what are your needs? What do you need to happen in order for communications to be effective and accessible for you? What is it? What does that take? Is it a sign language interpreter? Is it speech to text? Is it just you and I sitting one on one? What is it? What does that look like for you? So when you step out of your own comfort zone, instead of saying it's my way or the highway, you help us feel more included. You help us feel like we're part of the team. We're part of the plan. Because we talk about in healthcare, in order to truly make a difference, it requires teamwork, right? And part of that
Mhm.
team includes the patient, irregardless of what type of unique abilities they have. Irregardless, they should always be first and foremost a part of their care plan. We just have to be willing to make the effort and take the steps to make sure that happens.
Well said. Ashley, when I said that phrase, it doesn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you. What I was getting at is, if there were a doctor, let's say, who went deaf because of whatever, an accident or something, and then had to learn sign language, had to learn a new way to understand what somebody else was saying because they're no longer a hearing person. It shouldn't have to happen to them for it to matter to them. And that's what I'm getting at. They shouldn't have to be deaf to understand the needs of the deaf. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that because you don't have to walk in my shoes to understand what my life is like. I just told you what it's like. But it's up to you to take what I give you and say, oh, well, I need to make some adjustments. Instead of trying to force you, okay, instead of being dismissive, instead it's all about how can I help you? How can we fix it? Not saying that you're trying to fix hearing loss, no. You're trying to fix it on the level of, okay, you can hear, but I want you to enjoy this. How can we make that happen? Like, for example, I can't hear music, but I can still enjoy it. Turn up the bass and let me feel the beat. So you adapt. I may
Yes.
not be able to hear it audibly like you can, but I can still enjoy the moment with you. I just adapt to it. The question is, are
You
you
can
willing to
feel
be
it.
uncomfortable by turning up the bass so that I can enjoy the moment with you? So it's just about finding how can we make it work together as opposed to, well, that's your problem. You figure it out on your own.
Ashley, I have felt that sentiment many times. I hate to say it, but with my son's school, it's your problem. You figure it out. He can't read, write, or speak. He uses a communication device. He touches a picture and the device speaks words. The school doesn't want to pay $10,000 for this communication device. It's our problem. We have to figure it out. And it's hard. But you know what? We think ability first. That's something that we've learned right here in our area of Ohio. We have an ability center here in Northwest Ohio. It's called the Ability Center. And one of their mantras is think ability first. I am sure that what you were just saying right before I jumped in here was basically think ability first. Think what you can do and don't focus on all those little things that you can't. Think, how can I communicate with this person across from me? How can I make them feel seen, heard, and understood? I think that is a big message I want to make sure everybody listening hears. Think ability first.
That is why you see my signature quote that says, deafness should not be viewed as a disability, but rather a unique ability. Because me, for example, I can't hear a squawk. Like I can literally, with my hearing aids on, I'm aware that there's sound going around me. But if I take my hearing aids off, it's completely silent. You can stand next to me and pop off a gun and I won't flinch. But I'm so unique in other ways. You know, when you lose one sense, there's just something about how the body is wired. You adapt in so many other ways. I mean, my sense of smell, my vision is not that good. Clearly, I wear glasses. My sense of smell, my ability to pick up things. Perfect example of that. I remember sitting in a classroom at school, and I kept saying, "I smell something burning." I said, "I smell it. Something is burning." I said, "It smells like wire. It smells like wire burning." And then it went on for 3 days. I said, "Something is burning. Nobody else can smell it." And I kept saying, "There's a wire in here that's running hot." And guess what? A fire sparked. There was a wire that was burned. I could smell it before anybody else could. So I appreciate the other things that I can contribute. And as a pharmacist, how that's benefiting me is a perfect example I can use is sickle cell. We know that a lot of patients have sickle cell pain crises,
Yes.
but there are some of the patients who abuse the pain medication. And I was doing rounds. It was actually my 4th year of pharmacy school, and I was on internal medicine rounds in the hospital. And there was a patient who was being seen for a sickle cell pain crisis. And what the patient was saying and the body language didn't match. And when I picked up on that, it made me dig deeper, to ask deeper questions to get to the root of the problem. And by me doing that, we found out the patient was actually faking a crisis. Yes.
They shouldn't
And
do
I
that.
remember the attendant pulling me to the side and he said, "How did you know?" I said the body language didn't match with what he was saying. I mean, if you're truly in pain, your body's gonna be tensed up. If you're in the amount of pain that you're talking about. But they were too relaxed for me to be like, "Yeah, you asking for some IV pain medication." Let me ask some more questions, and that's how we figured it out. So, not being able to hear has caused me to really focus on body language because I can't hear your tone of voice. I can tell if you're mad. The only way I know you're mad at me is the fangs pop out. I'm like, you mad. So, there are other ways that I've learned to adapt and figure out. So, that's what makes us unique. So, we should not focus on the D, but focus on the ability. What can we do that you can't do? What can we bring to the team? Or what can we bring to the table that can help you as a healthcare provider or a business owner stand out from the crowd? But you gotta give us an opportunity to show you how we can shine instead of quickly being dismissive.
Well said. Ashley, I think that there's a lot of medical professionals out there who could certainly collaborate with someone who is deaf, whether they're a patient or another healthcare provider. But I'm saying we, as the hearing community, need to think ability first and not underestimate you.
Yes, you'd be surprised. Since I started my journey on LinkedIn, I have actually had the pleasure of connecting with other pharmacists who identify as individuals with hearing loss.
Oh,
They are
wow.
out there. They are out there do people with hearing loss tend to hide? Yes, they do. And I know why they hide. Rejection, hurt, fear of revealing how bad your hearing loss is. You're afraid that if I let you know how much I can hear, you're gonna fire me. Or you're gonna push me off in the corner. I'll be honest, I've done that. I was like, man. But then I realized I gotta be true to who I am. I'm Dale. That's it. But my hearing loss does not define who I am. It's a part of my identity, yes. But it doesn't define who I am or what I can do. So if someone can see me for what I'm capable of doing, then that person's not for me, and they're the ones missing out, not me. And I think that's the mentality anyone with any type of unique ability should have. Have confidence in who you are as an individual. Have confidence in your ability. And don't be afraid to shine, regardless of what someone else thinks or says, just because in their eyes, you're different. Everybody's different. The world would be such a dull place if everybody was the same.
That is true. That is true. There's so much we can all learn from one another.
Right. Exactly. We just need more people to be open-minded. Get out of their own head. Get out of their own way. Because when you have variety, when you have diversity, when you have inclusion, the sky is the limit. I mean, so many ideas can bloom. So many relationships can bloom. But you gotta be open-minded to do that. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing is people say they're open-minded, but when you put them on the spot or you put them in a situation, you realize, oh no, you're not as open-minded as you claim to be.
Yes, my son has really opened up my world. Having a child who's pretty low functioning, has autism, can't read, write, or speak, I have really learned to speak in pictures. I present him with visual options. Do you want this or that? And we adapt. If you just make accommodations and adaptations, you can get the answers you need. It's just thinking differently, like you said. And I know my world's been opened up because of him. And I think a lot of other pharmacists and other healthcare providers are going to feel their world opening up for having met you.
Yes, and if you think about it, when you form relationships with individuals that have unique abilities, what if it happens to you? What if it happens to someone that's close to you? That's why I always tell people, think about it. Keep this at the forefront of your mind. What if it was your wife, your daughter, your son, your husband, your mom, or your dad that all of a sudden wakes up one day and they can't hear? How would you feel? Or if it was you, how would you feel? So imagine how the individual you interact with as a patient, as a customer, as a person on the street, how do you treat them? How would you feel if someone treated you like that? Or someone close to you like that? I know it's cliche, they say treat others the way that you want to be treated.
It's the golden rule.
Exactly. So, with these courses that I have already available and in the making, I really, really want anyone who does not have a unique ability to see there's a way. The question is, are you willing to step outside of your comfort zone and navigate a different way to make it happen? To be inclusive, to stand apart. Because I promise you, in the deaf community, word spreads like wildfire. Seriously, the deaf community, even though there's a large number of us, It's just like pharmacy. The world is small. Everybody knows everybody. It's the same thing in the deaf community. Word spreads like wildfire. So if they find about Dr. Smith is open to all individuals with hearing loss, you may make any type of accommodation. Nothing is off the table. Your business is going to be booming because people in your area are going to be like, I want to go see that doctor. Because he's making an effort to step into my world and see what can I do to help you. You see, that's all it takes. All we want to do is feel like we belong. That's all we want to do. Even as a pharmacist, I often feel like I'm alone because I do have pressure from other pharmacists who are looking at me as, okay, you're deaf. What are you doing here? How do you function? I function just like you. I just can't hear. That's it. I went to school just like you did. I took boards just like you did. There's nothing different but my hearing loss.
I see you as an equal, definitely. And I'm definitely learning from you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been a joy getting to know you. And for anyone who's interested in finding your online classes, how do they do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Ashley Walker. Or you can type in Dr. A. Walker and it'll put on my LinkedIn profile. You can always send me a message and I can add you to the email list so that you can stay in the know about when the next event will be. I will always post when the next event will be, so keep your eye out on that. And feel free to send me a message or send me an email. I would be happy to share my email. My email is info at drashley.walker.com.
Thank you for that.
So I'm happy if you have any questions on how to engage with the deaf and hard of hearing community. I also offer consulting services where I help business owners and healthcare providers review their business plan to see what are my weaknesses, what are my strengths, what are my threats, what are my opportunities, what can I do in my place of business to be sure that I'm being ADA compliant when it comes to the deaf and hard of hearing community. Because guess what? You don't always have to have an interpreter. Take a general look at your ideal population. Are most of the people that you're seeing, are they deaf but don't speak sign language? Or are they deaf but speak sign language? Or do you have a mix of both? There are resources available to help you cater to both, whether they're deaf, hard of hearing, or even deaf blind. There are resources available to help you do that, and I help you find the best resource for your business. I'm connected to various vendors that I am in good connection with that have different products available to help bridge the communication barriers that many are like, how do I overcome this? There is a way. You just have to look for it, and I help you find what's best for you.
Very good. When you come on my podcast for a second time, I would like you to talk more about your advocacy and that sort of consulting that you do, because that's important too. I know we're at an hour already, and I don't want to make this 2 hours. So would you please come back another time and be on my podcast again?
Yes, I can definitely do that. I would be happy to join again.
Awesome. Awesome. And Ashley, one more thing about your online classes. How much do they cost?
It is $29. It is $29 for each course. Just say it again.
Okay, and about how long are they?
It is an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Yes.
Okay, very good. Is there anything else you'd like to say about your classes?
The class, the reason why I say that it's an hour to an hour and 15 minutes is because I don't want it to be so rigid. I want it to be an opportunity where we're engaging back and forth because I'm open for questions. If you have any questions, not just about ASL, but you want to know more about the deaf community, like how do I get a deaf person's attention? Hey, it is a safe place for you to ask any type of question about the deaf community because how are you gonna know if you don't ask? So I offer that safe place. It's not just for you to learn the basic language, but it's also for you to learn about the culture, deaf culture, learn how to engage with them, how to communicate with them. So that's why I have it be, it's laid back, it's fun, it's not all serious. I mean, who wants to be all serious learning about a language?
Not me.
From time to time, like on the first course that I had, I actually had a deaf DJ.
What?
A very good friend of mine, he's deaf and he's the DJ. And he's well known in New York. Yes. And he was playing music, he was showing off his DJ skills, and at the end I said, how many of you believe he's deaf? And they were like, are you serious? I'm absolutely serious. He is a deaf DJ. And his stage name is DJ Hear No Evil, which is fitting for him because he's deaf.
Clever.
So I like to bring in friends of mine that I've come to know over the course of my life. And they're all doing their own little thing, creating their own little niche. Because the world is predominantly hearing. It is. And we've often had to find our own way. Because we're not embraced, as you would think, in the hearing world as far as jobs or anything like that. So we have to create our own little niche so that we can survive and so that we can provide for our family as well.
Interesting. I definitely want to dive into a lot more of that type of thing when we have our second podcast interview. Sound good?
We can definitely do that. Yes, sounds good.
Awesome. Well, Ashley, I think that's all we've got for today. If you have anything else that you would like to mention, anything else as we wrap this up, the floor is yours. Do you want anybody to connect with you, follow you on social media?
Yes, like I mentioned, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also connect with me on Facebook. But I'll be honest, I am on LinkedIn more than I am on Facebook. But I do check both. So I would be happy to connect with you, even if you just have simple questions. I'm here. Because if you don't know, you're never going to know until you ask. And I'm not offended by any questions, comments, or suggestions. Or if there's anything you want me to talk about in regards to the deaf community, I'm open. Because I'm here to help you. I'm here to educate you. And it does give me feedback. It is helpful to have feedback from those who are curious about the community. What is it that you would like to know? What is it that you need clarity on? If I don't know the answer, I will definitely find the answer for you because, hey, even though I've been there for over 30 years, there's some things that I have absolutely no experience with. For instance, I don't have a cochlear implant. That is a surgery where they install a hearing device for you. I don't have that, but I have plenty of friends who have that, and I can always reach out to them to answer any questions you may have, or even have them share their opinion. So I'm happy to be a source.
Yes, you are a resource, and I appreciate that. And as we wrap this up, I just want to take maybe 5 minutes and talk about how you found this experience of having a podcast interview. How did you like being on a podcast?
Okay. This was an amazing, amazing podcast. I'll be honest, I was a little bit nervous the first time because I was like, but I'm deaf. How does this work? But I really appreciate Kim for asking me, hey, what is it that you need to make this a smooth podcast? So the fact that you took the time to ask me, hey, do you need an interpreter? That blew me away. That really blew me away because not often does anyone say, what if I offer an interpreter? Would that be helpful? It's definitely helpful. Even though I read lips, you never know what the quality is going to look like. And you can have backup. So I really appreciate that. You did the number one thing you should always do when you want to do an interview with someone with hearing loss. And what you did was, what is it that you need? How can I make my podcast accessible to you? And the fact that you said, yeah, my podcast typically is audio, but you want to go the extra mile to make it a visual aspect too, which is awesome because you're expanding your audience because, like I said, there are pharmacists out there who also have hearing loss. They may not reveal that to you. So you having another avenue of them to have access to this podcast is amazing. So I appreciate that. And this has been an amazing, amazing experience. So I appreciate you for making the adjustments and the accommodations to have this podcast be successful.
You're welcome. How do you say you're welcome in ASL?
Welcome. Take it open. Take your pointy finger and go down to your chin, your chest. Welcome. Yes. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a pleasure. You helped me a lot, Ashley, to prepare for this. I think talking to the guest is the number one thing, and I'm including this as part of the podcast episode today because I want to encourage other podcasters to invite deaf guests onto your podcast. People with hearing loss have a lot to offer, and having them on your podcast can only help in so many ways. Help people expand their hearts and expand their abilities, and their willingness to make things more accessible. It shouldn't have to happen to you for it to be important to you. And I want anybody listening to this to know it's totally possible to accommodate a person with hearing loss to be successful on a podcast as a guest.
Right. Right. And I also want to add, don't be afraid to have a person with hearing loss that also has trouble speaking. Because guess what? There are some who don't have the ability to speak, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a message to share. There are many interpreters who have dual roles. Not only do they relay the hearing individual's message to the deaf individual, but they can also relay the message from the deaf individual to the hearing, so they can also be our voice. That is definitely doable. I do both. Sometimes I just don't feel like using my voice, so I'll tell the interpreter the voice for me. So don't ever allow that to scare you off from including someone with hearing loss because everybody has a message regardless.
That's right. That's right. Is there anything else you'd like to share about being a podcast guest with hearing loss?
No. No. Well, I will say this. When you said it's good to have a headphones, I was like, but I can't hear. What was the point? But I was like, oh, so when you explained to me the reason for the headset on the microphone, I was like, well, that makes sense. So that's why I asked and I gave you heads up at the beginning. If I'm too loud or if I'm not loud enough, let me know because I won't know. So I appreciate you for helping me navigate because this is an experience for me as well. It's the first time for me really wearing headsets.
You look awesome. You look very official. Yeah, and you'll be able to use them on future podcasts. I am going to make a prediction. I think this is the first of many. You and I will work together again, at least a second time coming up here, but I think you'll get invited on other podcasts too.
Yes. All righty. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, it's been a pleasure having you here on the Pharmacist Voice podcast to share how you use your voice as an educator in the online class arena. And I want you to have the best rest of the summer. It's late August. You've got until after Labor Day. So have a good rest of your summer and you take care.
YouTube, alrighty.